Number 15. Scooby and Shaggy got priority. When animation resources were limited, the production team had to make difficult choices about where to focus their efforts and attention each episode. Not every character could receive the same level of detail and expressive movement in each scene throughout the show. Scooby and Shaggy consistently received priority because they drove the comedy and connected most strongly with audiences. The duo got the most expressive facial animations, the most dynamic physical comedy, and the most screen time during chase sequences throughout the entire series. Their reactions were exaggerated and fluid, while other characters often stood more stiffly or moved in simpler ways on screen. This wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate allocation of limited resources by the production team. Fred, Velma, and Daphne were simplified to keep production moving efficiently without unnecessary delays or cost overruns. Their movements were functional, but rarely as lively or detailed as the comedy duo's expressions and actions. This priority system ensured that the show's biggest crowd pleasers always looked their best on screen, even when the budget couldn't stretch to cover everyone equally. Number 16. Nothing supernatural ever happened. One of the most consistent rules throughout the entire series was that every single monster, ghost, or creature had to be a person in disguise. No matter how terrifying the villain appeared or how impossible their abilities seemed, the unmasking always revealed a human with a motive behind the mask. Real supernatural events were strictly forbidden by the show's creative guidelines from the very beginning. This rule wasn't just a storytelling choice, it was a deliberate strategy to maintain parental trust and network approval throughout the show's entire run. Parents could feel comfortable letting their children watch because they knew nothing genuinely scary or unexplainable would ever happen on screen. The monsters were always fake, and the world always made logical sense by the end of each episode. The man in a mask formula also taught young viewers a subtle lesson about critical thinking and not believing everything they see at first glance. Appearances could be deceiving, and there was always a rational explanation behind seemingly impossible events and frightening encounters. This consistency helped the show maintain its identity and gave audiences a comforting predictability they could rely on week after week. Number 18. Daphne's traps were intentional. Daphne Blake earned the nickname Danger-Prone Daphne for good reason throughout the entire series run. She was constantly getting captured, falling through trapdoors, or stumbling into trouble while the rest of the gang investigated nearby. This pattern wasn't accidental or a result of poor writing. It was a deliberate structural choice made by the creative team from early on. Her vulnerability served an important narrative function in each episode of the show. By putting Daphne in peril, writers could create tension and raise stakes without endangering Scooby or Shaggy, who needed to remain available for comedy throughout the story. Daphne's captures gave the gang something urgent to respond to, while keeping the tone balanced between suspense and humor. The reputation stuck with the character for decades and became an integral part of her identity in the franchise. Later versions of the show would address and even subvert this trope, giving Daphne more agency and self-defense skills to handle threats. But in the original series, her tendency to find trouble was a carefully designed storytelling tool that kept plots moving forward efficiently. Number 21. Every town was nowhere. If you tried to figure out where the gang's adventures actually take place, you'll quickly realize that geography is deliberately vague throughout the entire series. Towns have generic names, landmarks are entirely fictional, and there's rarely any indication of what state or region the mystery machine has wandered into during each individual episode. This vagueness was completely intentional on the part of the creative team working on the show. By avoiding real places, the show remained timeless and safe for endless reruns across different markets and regions around the country. No location-specific details meant no risk of dating the episodes or alienating viewers from areas that weren't represented on screen. The deliberate erasure of geography also simplified production significantly for the studio and its artists. Writers didn't need to research real locations or worry about accuracy when depicting towns and landscapes in each episode. Every setting could be whatever the story needed it to be, without any constraints from reality getting in the way of the narrative or creative vision. Number 19. Fear was carefully dialed down. Watch the gang encounter a monster, and you'll notice something unusual about their reactions throughout the entire series. Even in supposedly terrifying situations, their fear responses are remarkably measured and controlled compared to real life. Scooby and Shaggy panic comedically, but nobody ever seems genuinely traumatized or deeply frightened by what they experience on screen. This emotional restraint was mandated by broadcast standards that governed children's programming at the time of production. Showing characters in genuine distress or terror could upset young viewers and trigger complaints from concerned parents watching alongside their children. The production team had to dial down fear to levels that felt exciting but never overwhelming or disturbing for young audiences. The result is a tone that feels spooky but ultimately safe for audiences of all ages watching together. Characters bounce back quickly from scares, nobody suffers lasting consequences from their encounters, and the overall mood stays light even during intense chase sequences. This careful emotional calibration helped make the show a comfortable viewing experience for entire families watching together at home. Number 21. The formula eventually backfired. The rigid structure that made the show so successful eventually became its biggest creative limitation as years passed by. Every episode followed the same pattern: arrive somewhere spooky, encounter a monster, investigate clues, chase sequence, unmask the villain. Audiences knew exactly what to expect every single time they tuned in to watch a new episode. This predictability made the series an easy target for parody and criticism from comedy writers and cultural commentators everywhere. The formula became so well known that it was mocked in countless other shows, sketches, and films over the decades following its original run on television. What once felt fresh and exciting had become a punchline about lazy, repetitive children's programming. Later versions of the franchise had to reinvent the format entirely to survive and attract new generations of audiences. Some added ongoing storylines, others introduced real supernatural elements, and many tried to subvert expectations in creative and surprising ways. The original formula built an empire, but it also created a creative prison that took decades for the franchise to finally escape from. Number 21. Scooby became the star by accident. When the show first launched, it was designed as an ensemble piece, where all 5 main characters shared the spotlight relatively equally throughout each episode. Fred led investigations, Velma solved puzzles, Daphne found trouble, and Shaggy provided comic relief alongside his dog. No single character was meant to dominate the others in terms of screen presence or audience attention. But audience reactions quickly made it clear that Scooby was the breakout star of the entire series from the beginning. Kids loved the cowardly Great Dane more than anyone else in the gang, and that preference showed up in ratings, fan mail, and merchandise sales across the country. The network and producers took notice of this unexpected development and adjusted their approach accordingly. Over time, Scooby's dominance reshaped the entire franchise in ways nobody had originally planned or anticipated. His name came first in titles, his image, marketing campaigns, and spin-offs increasingly centered on his adventures rather than the full gang's mysteries. Scooby-Doo succeeded not because it was perfect, but because it adapted brilliantly under pressure. Tight budgets forced creative shortcuts that became beloved traditions. Strict censorship rules led to clever workarounds that defined the tone of the show. Many of the elements fans love most, the repeating door gags, the Scooby Snacks bribes, the man in a mask reveals, were solutions to problems viewers never knew existed. Every constraint became an opportunity, and every shortcut became a tradition that defined the franchise for generations. If you enjoyed learning these secrets, hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden stories behind your favorite shows. Now we want to hear from you. Which Scooby villains scared you most growing up? Let us know in the comments.